Back in the old days, in the small country of Laos, the Hmong people used to live high up in the mountains. They usually traveled by foot. Not sure why, but many villagers during that time farmed far away from their village. That's why many families would spend several nights at their farmhouse during the week, because it's just too far to travel back and forth by foot. For my family's farm, it took about half a day to get there. It's hard to travel by foot since we have 3 young children. Therefore, we told my husband's family and relatives that we're moving to live at our farm. At first, the family did not want us to move away to live by ourselves, but we told them that once our children are older, it will be easier to travel back and forth and we'll move back to the village. After moving to live at our farm for several years, we got comfortable and did not want to move back to the village. We would go back to visit our relatives and family on occasion and during family gatherings. One day my husband wasn't feeling good. He had a mild headache, watery eyes, coughing and sneezing like the usual allergies. However, his condition got worse. He became weak and wasn't able to take care of himself. I have to bathe him, clothe him, and feed him. I want to go back to the village to inform his family about his condition. But if I go, there's no one that can take care of my husband. I have 2 daughters and 1 son, but they're still children and they can't take care of their father yet. I thought that maybe my husband will eventually get better, but his condition got worse. One night, my husband told me that if he doesn't get better, please bury him at the edge of our farm. He wants to be closer to us so he can watch over us since we live so far away from the village. I told him not to say that, and I believe that he will eventually get better. The next day, after feeding my husband in the morning, I told him that I will run back to the village to inform his family. After that, I told my 3 children to stay with their father, and I'll be back by the end of the day. That day, I went back to the village to inform his family and his relatives about his condition. However, it was harvest season, so everyone is busy. Everyone told me that they will come by to see my husband in a few days. I got back from the village just before the sunset. I saw my 3 children outside our house. It seems like they were crying. They told me that their father had died. My heart sunk. I got inside the house and saw him on the bed. His face was pale yellow and he wasn't breathing. No matter how much I've tried to wake him up, he was unresponsive. When I touched his hands, he was already stiff. We Hmong have a history of our dead rising back up as zombie after they die. Knowing this fact, I tie his arms to his body and his ankles together using grass ropes. That night, I fixed a spot on the floor for me and my 3 children to sleep because my husband is in our bed. Our house is made out of bamboo, so there are little openings and gaps on every walls. During a clear night sky, it's easy to see in the house without any candle or lantern. Nothing happened during the first night. We kept my husband's body inside the house because we don't know what to do with him. We're just waiting for his family and the relatives. I know that his family and his relatives will want to do a traditional funeral. On the second night, it was a little dark outside, so therefore it's a little dark inside as well. But from the spot where I sleep, I can see my husband. It was around midnight. I woke up to some heavy breathing coming from where my husband is. I thought maybe it was just my children, but the more I listened to it, the more I believed that the heavy breathing is actually from my husband. The next day, I was hoping that his family and the relatives would come by so we would know what to do with his body. That morning before sunrise, I made some green beans for breakfast. My young son was still sleeping, while his two older sisters began their morning with me at the farm. After sunrise, I saw my son running towards us and calling for me. When he got to me, he was pale as a ghost. He told me that while he was still sleeping, he saw his father got up, hop over to the cooking area, and ate some green beans from the table. I told him to stop lying, but he said he really saw his father got up to eat some green beans. I told him to stay there with his two sisters as I walked back to the house. When I got inside, my husband was still in the same spot where I left him. I thought that maybe my son was only dreaming earlier, but when I went over to my husband's body and started crying to him, I started touching his face and I saw that there are some pieces of green beans that got stuck between some of his teeth. I got scared. I really hoped that his family and his relatives would come by that day. By sunset, there was no signs of my husband's family or his relatives. My husband's body already beginning to smell. We thought maybe just one more night, and maybe the next day his family and relatives will show up. That night was a full moon. While sleeping on the floor with my three children, I can see my husband's body on our bed clearly because of the moonlight from the outside. It was hard to sleep that night with the smells in the house. It was right around midnight when I woke up to some heavy breathing again, coming from the same direction of my husband's body. I thought to myself again that maybe the heavy breathing is one of my children. Then I heard my husband started grinding his teeth like when he was still alive. When I looked at him, I can see some facial movement. I thought maybe I was just seeing things. Then he turned his head to look at me and he was blinking at me. Then I heard my husband said, "Wife, I'm cold. Please give me a blanket." I got scared and covered my head with my blanket. When I peeked out just to look at him, he was still looking at me and blinking his eyes. That night I wasn't able to sleep. Before sunrise, I saw him place his head back the way it was before. That day my husband's body decomposed so much. His body starts swelling, his tongue swells out of his mouth. His skins appear to be a bluish green color. The smells were just intolerable. It's been a few days, so I thought his family and relatives would come by. But by sunset, there was no signs of his family or his relatives. I'm scared of what might happen that night, so I asked my three children to help me drag their father out. We dragged him out with a blanket and put him on the edge of our farm. That night, I cleaned our bed. Our bed was made out of bamboo, so it's easy to clean and wipe down. My three children and I slept on the bed that night. I slept by the wall. At midnight, I woke up to a shuffling noise from the corn portion of our farm. I peeked outside through the gaps of our bamboo wall. After a while, I saw something crawl its way out of the corn. It was a clear night sky, so I can see exactly what that thing was. It was my husband. I was so scared as I watched him crawl his way to the wall where I sleep. When he got to the wall, he said, "Wife, I'm very hungry. Can you bring me something to eat?" I did not answer him. I was scared and I don't know what to say. I want him to think that we're not inside and hope that he would just go away. But somehow it seems like he knew we were inside and that I was sleeping on that side of the wall. Then he said, "Wife, I'm very thirsty. Can you bring me something to drink?" I did not answer him. After a while, he said, "Wife, I'm cold. Can you bring me a blanket?" He's trying to trick me to go outside. But I know that that's not my husband anymore. That's something else. He kept trying to whisper to me through the wall. Then I said to him, "You're already dead. Please don't do that to us." After a while, I heard him crawling around the house. Before sunrise, he crawled back into the corn portion of our farm. That morning at sunrise, I told my children to get ready. We're going back to the village. After everyone got ready, we closed the door and left our farm. When we're halfway to the village, we met my husband's family and his relatives. They were on their way to our farm. When I met them, I broke down and cried. Then I told them what had happened. After that, my mother-in-law and the women in the group walked us back to the village while the men went to our farm. That day, when the men returned to the village after sunset, they said they found my husband's body inside our farmhouse. So they dug a hole by the edge of our farm and buried him there. They also put rocks on top of his grave to prevent him from crawling out. We did not return back to our farm after that.